Yes, sir.
Right. Where are you located?
I'm located right now in currently rainy Florida.
Whereabouts in Florida?
Uh, just outside of West Palm Beach.
Oh, beautiful. Good. I know the area. It's fantastic.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I appreciate you again for accepting my invite to come on the show. Um, Last year, I know, and definitely want to thank Adam Tevlin for making the connection
Yes,
and
absolutely.
this whole community. And I know you probably saw the invite and or thought and saw my names that Drums and Rums. I don't. Okay, that's an interesting thing.
Well, I've tasted a little bit of rum in my life, so you're on a good path.
Excellent, excellent. All right. So, so I know we've got about an hour, and so I'm gonna go through. I've been reading up on a lot of stuff and listening to other podcasts and interviews you've done, and I'm really excited to talk to you. Uh, as I probably mentioned, maybe that I had on last year the global rum ambassador, and then I said, well, what's a better way if I'm doing drums and rums that I've got the global drum ambassador too? So welcome to the podcast, Dom.
Fantastic, Paul. Great.
And they'll give you a little applause here. So, so Dom, again, where I know it's like one of those where do we start kind of things, and and I've got a couple questions here, things that discussion, some things you probably you know definitely love to talk about, but I think I've got to start off right is how do you maintain your level of energy?
Well, Paul, thanks so much to be on your show here. I am having a great life. I love what I do every day. I mean, if someone can live their passion every day, and you got to really kind of understand what that means. If you're passionate about something and you live that every day, I love music. I love drumming. I'm an avid student of the art form. I am teaching thousands of drummers around the world. I've got over 3,000 students that I teach from over 60 countries, which is overwhelming in its way of how it is. But each lesson is a real exciting moment of time because every student is on a different path. I've got to understand that path and guide them along the way so they can feel some enjoyment out of this art form. And if I can share some of my enjoyment with them, there's a connection that happens that's very exciting between doing the different clinics I did and master classes I'm doing and the books that I'm writing. There's so much going on that the excitement of all of that, which is again living my passion, fuels me with an energy that I want to wake up every morning as early as I can. I go to bed as late as I can to squeeze the most out of it, and that becomes the joy of life. And it goes by really fast. So the object is to squeeze the most that we can to enjoy this time that we have on this planet.
Yeah, yeah, and you've got a long career. Started drumming. I know a lot of my guests probably know who you are. Probably know, and actually, what I've referred to all the past guests now, whether I refer to them as drummers or rummers, and those that have been on the show and they've become part of the Drums and Rums alum. I guess like rhyming maybe, but you know, I take so much, I learn from them. I find everybody fascinating. Everybody's got a story, whether it's talking with Adam, as we mentioned, uh, Kelly's been on, so, and again, others that are telling a story about the rum side of things. And I just kind of find it enjoying just having that conversation. Like you and I just bumped at the Palm Beach International Airport, sitting at maybe up at the bar there and I don't even know who you are. And you just mentioned drums. I'm like, oh, really? Okay. And then that's how the conversation, this is how we use, and again, long career. For those that don't know, like I said, I know you started out very at an early age and, um, and still to this day, how'd you develop even, throughout that career, your enthusiastic style of playing?
It's interesting that you mentioned Adam. Adam is a wonderful drummer, and I had a chance to meet him on Zoom and his son. And Adam is, perpetuating a lot of these concepts with his circle of connections that he has with what's happening. Kelly Ray Tubbs, you mentioned, she is doing some great stuff historically with drums, and as a wonderful leader of the female part of playing drums, and she's a phenomenal player and singer. And these people inspire me. So, I mean, I've been very, very fortunate to meet wonderful people that continue to inspire me. And I was inspired at a young age. At the age of 11, my two older brothers and my younger sister, they grabbed guitar, bass, and piano, and I played drums. And we had a little family band. And, you know, like many people, it was the Beatles, seeing them on television in February 9th of 1964, that really kind of sparked this excitement to want to play music. And we saw the joy that they were having. We put our band together and started playing. And then after about a year, we had plenty of songs. We started working, playing different private parties, and then getting paid. So here I am, 12 years old, getting paid to play music. I said, this is really great. I can play music and what I enjoy doing. And then after I play and have fun and see people dancing and singing to all these songs, and it's just joy and happiness. And then I get paid.
That's a heck of a lot better than a paper route.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because some of my friends had paper routes and they were working all week, waking up at like 4:30 in the morning, having to go get the paper, wrap the paper with a rubber band, put it in their bicycle, ride around, and deliver these newspapers before 6 o'clock, before they had to go to school. And they'd end up making maybe $10 a week. And at that time, in the mid 60s, you know, $10 was a good amount of money. I'm going out and I'm playing a job and I'm getting $30 or $40 a night playing with a band. I said, "Boy, this is really good." So it was a part of the fact of the success of that I was rewarded from my efforts. So any money that I made, I invested back into education, back into learning the instrument, private lessons with many different teachers, purchasing as many different books as I can at the time, upgrading my equipment. So it was all a part of this ongoing fun of this journey that I'm still on now at 68 years young. I'm still going through books. I'm still upgrading my gear of what I'm doing. I'm still researching it and playing and learning. And it's just a joyful ride.
And you epitome that constant learner. And, you know, we don't never, the takeaway is don't ever stop learning. There's always something to learn.
That's such an important part of the understanding. It's very easy to say, but that means you've got to invest in drum books, and you've got to watch things on the internet. You've got to find different teachers to keep on giving you information, because that knowledge that you go and comes into you, when it enters your mind, it changes you. And if it changes you for the better, which is really what, you know, knowledge and research and learning does, you're growing. And if you're growing, you're on this wave of fun and, you know, and newness. There are new things that are constantly happening. And to me, that's an important part, that constant learner. I always say that, you know, the wonderful explorer Ponce de Leon back in the 1500s was in the search of the fountain of youth. And he died in Florida not finding the fountain of youth. Well, I tell people, with all my travels to over 60 countries, I found the fountain of youth. I have been able to stay young with the fountain of youth, and the fountain of youth for me is constantly learning. If I'm still learning and new ideas of what's happening after playing drums for well over 55 years, it's exciting that there's newness to be discovered if we have the personality and the desire to discover.
And I think with your longevity, and obviously you got to take care of yourself, you got to do all these other things, and not just, you know, exercise your brain, but you've definitely got to be an inspiration excuse me, for young and old and everybody in between. You know, I mean, that's, like I said, I thank you. That's what I said. I'm not a little bit of gushing, you know, is just to have you on and talk to you is.
Well, thanks, Paul. You know, I think what's interesting is the fact that I have to respect myself. And what that means is I've got to eat properly. I drink, you know, carrot juice and blended vegetables and stuff, just to kind of keep myself in the best health I can have, so I can maintain this effort. You know, our resources, what I always say, are time and energy. Those really, you know, money's not necessarily a resource, because that comes and goes. Time and energy. Energy is your health. The better your health is, the more ability you have to do things. And time is moving by so fast. I can't believe I'm 68 years young, because I still think of that 11 or 12-year-old kid that was playing, that was discovering, and I have that same kind of enthusiasm. So finding that constant, you know, information and bring it in allows me to be healthy in mind, in spirit, and intellectually and emotionally, and keep it all balanced.
Uh, so I think what was something I found, reading up was, and I think folks may take this kind of nonchalant now because we're very far down this path, but being the first drum instructor, I guess in the world, I think that's how I read it, right? In the world to give lessons via the internet. With everyone staying at home, you already were ahead of the game,
Oh yeah.
right?
It really was kind of interesting when this whole thing happened. When Skype in the beginning of this camera slash internet challenge was going on, because of my travels for my companies, Sabian Cymbals and Mapex Drums and Vader Drumsticks and Remo Drumheads, these companies would send me around the world, and I was traveling at a pretty intense pace before the internet. Well, people knew me and knew what I did, so they wanted to take lessons with me, but there wasn't the chance to really take lessons with me. So what I first started doing was I would tell people, they would write to me, Dom, I'd like lessons with you. I would say, send me a videotape, a 15-minute videotape of your playing, and a blank audio cassette, and a check from my time. So I would receive a package from, tons of countries, and I get this package, and it would have a video. I'd pop it into my video player. I'd watch it, make notes on it. Then I'd rewind it, and I would start the audio tape, the cassette tape first. And I said, now I'm starting the cassette tape, and I want you to put the video in the machine. When I tell you I'm going to start the video, and I want you to watch it with me while I'm speaking on this tape. So I turn the video on, and I say, boy, at this point, I notice that you're kind of leaning towards your left, so your balance is off. So pause the videotape, keep the audio tape running, and now look at the first sheet I sent you. Here's an exercise on balance. And then I'd say, now let's go back to the video and start the video. So I would teach on the cassette with the video while they're back watching it at the same time. And there was a time where I had a couple of hundred videos on my desk. So what I would do is, after I would teach all day and travel all day, I'd come back home, spend some time with my family. When they all went to bed, I'd go back down to my desk and pop in videotapes and start to work and teach that way. So then Skype came out. When Skype came out, I was one of the first people. Skype in the beginning had if you joined, it told you what number you were. I was like 103 or something like that. When it came on, I joined. I said, let me see where this is at. And when I joined, I started teaching this way and telling people to join. So I told other people to join the Skype to get this happening so I could see you. I'd see it. Now, it was grainy. The sound sometimes wasn't that great. But it was at least a way to communicate with somebody, across the pond, to be able to understand what the beginning of the internet was about. So when I did that, Skype actually contacted me and said, Mr. Famularo, we see what you're doing. That you're teaching lessons. This is the first that we've seen. So they brought me on as a consultant to say, what do you need better from us? Well, I went down the whole list. At this time, we had a separate modem that we had to attach to the computer that you had to dial up through the modem with your phone line plugged in. I said, boy, if we can improve that, if we can improve the video, if we can improve the audio, if we can improve having the ability to record, so the lesson could be recorded for the student to go back and watch it. So I gave them all these ideas. And as they started making improvements, and then other companies like Zoom came out, and Zoom had a better focus for myself on how the audio and the video was happening. Plus, you can record on Zoom. So I switched over to Zoom, and here I am all these years now still doing it and reaching people around the world. And just before this show that we're doing right now, Paul, I've already taught to 4 countries this morning.
Oh,
So I already had what else from China, from Canada, from Belgium, and from Uruguay, and they came on and we did it. And now I've got this interview, and I'll go to events. So in the course of a day, I can reach 4 or 5 countries and teach and have that level of accessibility with this new world. And the advantages are, to me, fantastic. I can now see the student on their own drum set. So now they're in their comfort zone, so I can then guide them the way they're sitting, how they have the drums or the cymbals adjusted. We can discuss that, and we're really making some great improvements. Plus, they're saving time traveling to me. So now the time that they save traveling is more time to practice. So there are a lot of advantages in the way that the world now is accepting all this online learning.
yeah. And unfortunately, we're still 2 years in, and I know at least at my day job, we still can't figure out the double mute. So with sticking with the his thoughts about, the technology and teaching with it, where do you two questions. Where do you think it can go? I mean, I know we've already, like you just described there, VHS tapes and audio tapes, now internet and cameras in our houses. Where do you think it can go? And then how about the improvements in VR? What do you think is possible with VR?
Well, I think what's happening is how what I'd like to see the next step is into hologram, where I can have different cameras and lights around me in a 360 view, and from my drum set, someone can then bring my full view of that 360 surround visually and audible to hear exactly what's happening, and they can walk around me in their home or on their desk while I'm playing. I think I'd love to see that in my lifetime because I think that's even going to speed up the process of learning where people can even see me in person and the movement while I'm playing and while I'm on my kit making the sounds and creating. They'll see the creation right there, in front of them. I think that's kind of the next step. And AI, this intelligence of what's going on is so powerful. There are now programs that you have that you can go and listen to a song, and through these AI different adaptations, you can remove all the drums on it on any well-known song, remove the drums and play along to it. You can remove any instrument. So I think we're really stepping into a whole nother level of excitement that is going to even speed the educational process.
Yeah. All right. So Mark Zuckerberg, I know you're listening, or Elon. Let's get on this. We're not that far with the metaverse and Facebook. And then my kids have got the Oculuses, and it just came to mind thinking about the Foo Fighters next week have a concert. I guess it's going to be done through VR through the
Yeah.
Oculus.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and my kids have it. We watch it. There's exercise programs you can do where you're fighting and it keeps you kind of in shape. My wife was doing that, and I walked in the room one day. She had this thing on, and she was kind of looked like she was battling with a lightsaber, and and she came out of it after 30 minutes, and she was completely exhausted and felt good about it. So it's now stepping into a whole nother adaptation of how we can accept this into our lives for healthy reasons, for awareness, for mental stability. All this stuff is a real positive move forward.
Yep. Yep. Beat Savers is one heck of a game. I think that's the game she was playing. I know my youngest is always like, he looks like he's just standing in the room flailing his arms, but I can see what he's obviously doing with the beats and the lightsabers and so forth.
When I go in, I take video of them. I sneak in the room and take video of them, and I use this as blackmail later on. What the heck is going on? What the heck are you doing?
Oh, the circle of trust is broken. So, and again, I know there's some. This is something I know your time is very valuable, so I want to respect it. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of people tell you this. Is just we talk to you so long, and but I guess an area what I thought was really interesting, and again, listening to some of the other interviews and reading up on you is, you growing up, obviously growing up in the Big Apple, right, in the New York area. You currently still live there, and then having the opportunity to study under some of the great drummers like Jim Chapin and Joe Morello, and then some of the stories how yeah, I was just watching the episode with Adam where you talked about packing up Max Roach's drum kit, and and then the Sinatra story, and again, there's so much others can listen. Check out the other episodes. There's tons of great. Dom's got a lot of great stories, so I'm just gonna tease a little bit. Go look for more stuff. But do you think I guess just that because you were in New York, lived there, that New York or that tri-state area is, and it was and still is considered a mecca for musicians?
But I do. I think it still is. There are other meccas that have opened up, like Nashville in California and the Chicago area, which are fantastic. But I think what happened for myself, my grandfather, when he came from Italy to America, settled in America, and then stayed in New York City, and then eventually moved out to Long Island. And Long Island was a suburbia part of New York City, so it was a short drive from where I lived to get into New York City. And it just in New York at that time in the 60s and 70s, there was so many great musicians that were performing every day. I mean, there was one event. I drove into New York with a couple of friends, and we parked the car, and we went to see the first set of Elvin Jones at a club called Storytown. And we went there. It was the 8 o'clock show. We went to the show for 1 hour of just intensity with Elvin Jones. He played great. Talked to him afterwards, and just how he played and the uniqueness of Elvin and how he phrased and played in the intensity. It was just an eye opener. Then we walked across the street to another club called Storyville and went to see Tony Williams playing with the band Lifetime. And we caught his set from 9 to 10. And we sat down, bought our 2-drink minimum, and sat there and watched Tony play. And Tony was like just completely on fire. It was like the first tune started, I call it in your face. He played intense, totally intense, and it stayed that way for the entire hour. It was like a roller coaster ride. So after Tony played, my gosh, it was just, and I had met Tony. He used to come for lessons with a wonderful teacher by the name of Charlie Perry out here in Long Island, and I used to take lessons with Charlie, and I met Tony early on at these lessons. So I went up to him after. I said, Tony, you sounded great, gave him a hug. And then with my friends, we left, and we went to just about a block and a half around the corner. It was a club called Buddy's Place, where Buddy was playing with his big band in his club. So we go in there, we catch his first set. Now it's the 10 o'clock set. We go in there, we sit down, and now you've got this big band playing in relatively a small place. It wasn't a large place. And the big band's playing. So you were, no matter where you sit, you were kind of like in the band. And to hear the band play and Buddy driving it and just pushing this musicians to the hilt was exhilarating at a moment. We just kind of like just were now, we were speaking tongues to each other. We couldn't even, we were mouthing sounds. But we understood each other. Like, it was just so intense. It really was. And then we finished Buddy, and we walked a few blocks down the street to a club called 7th Avenue South to hear Steve Gadd with the Brecker Brothers. So this was in one night. And that was a very typical night where we'd go to hear one player, two players, because there was so much going on. So New York had that kind of an energy where you just got pulled into this greatness. And when you start to see Elvin and Tony and Buddy and Gadd in a night, you start to formulate conceptualization of playing that is extremely unique. You start to see how they're moving, how they tune their drums, how they set up the drums, the kind of music that they're playing, their intensity, their concentration, their level of passion and commitment. All of that is what you're pulling in. New York offered that at a high level. And then there was one night I went to hear Buddy Rich's big band, Count Basie's big band, and Duke Ellington in one night. I mean, that was like, and Buddy's band, of course, with Buddy on drums was incredible. Count Basie had Papa Joe Jones playing. He sat in for a show. That was incredible. And Sonny Payne was playing with him, and Papa Joe Jones sat in. And then I went to hear Duke Ellington's band with Sonny Greer. And then it was just like, it was in one night. We walked out fired up on big band music. So New York was an easy injection of passion and greatness. And I think it's still that way. They're still at the Iridium. You can go to the Blue Note. You hear Gadd and Weckel and all these great players. I just heard Lib DeVito with his band, the Slim Kings, at the Iridium. They sounded fantastic. And, I mean, it's still that way.
Right. Yeah. And I had my dad told me a story. I had dragged him onto the podcast, and it just happened to be Father's Day. And I'm glad I really did it because, again, he was just sit down and have a conversation with your father, right? And record it and talk about some stuff. And he shared some things and they didn't want to share, and which is fine, which is fine. But he shared the story. He goes, well, I don't really have any drum stories, more rum stories. But my one drum story was I saw Buddy Rich. I go, wait a minute, you're just telling me this now? After all these years, and we originally lived in New Jersey before moving to Florida, so I don't know if it was a club in Newark, or maybe it was New York. I'm not sure, but he just dropped that story, and I was like,
well, Buddy hit the road hard. Buddy was on the road for sometimes 50 weeks out of the year, with his band playing and flying and traveling and the bus going around. So he hit high schools and local clubs. I probably heard Buddy easily 50 times in my lifetime, live. And I met Buddy in 1971. My drum teacher, Al Miller, was good friends with Buddy, and I was one of Al's top students. So when Buddy came in town and called up his friend Al would call me up and take me along. So that's kind of how I met Buddy in 1971. And once you meet Buddy live and you meet him, and he was just a wonderful guy. He really was a great guy. All the stories that they talk about Buddy and him being crazy and yelling was really just, Buddy just maintaining his band at a high level. But he really was an incredible guy, and he played great all the time. There was never a Buddy Rich show that I heard live where I walked away saying, ah, man, Buddy was a little off the mark today. Never did I say that, because every show was like, God, what did I just witness? It was that. So it was really, really powerful to experience that. And having met Buddy and being backstage, and backstage at a Buddy Rich concert, I always say you meet three types of people. You meet all the different drummers that were there. That's where I met Elvin and all these different great drummers, and Jim Chapin and Morello, and they would all go backstage to see Buddy. So being backstage, I met them all. The second tier of people were the band leaders. I met Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Stan Kenton, all these great band leaders. They'd go to hear Buddy when he was playing backstage. So you'd be in this backstage, circle of like talent. The third level were the Rat Pack, was Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Jerry Lewis. I met Jerry Lewis backstage at a Buddy Rich show at like a high school in like Brooklyn. It was like ridiculous. And Jerry Lewis is backstage listening. He happened to be in town. He was in the area. Went to see Buddy play, and Buddy was another dedicated drummer, as was all of his friends. So Jerry Lewis was also a good drummer. So these guys, it was the drumming that connected us all together, and that was amazing to witness. And Sinatra would come backstage and see Buddy and give him a hug, and they'd talk. It was just a pretty powerful experience.
It's any of that stuff from that era was, excuse me, definitely got such a mystique. Like you said, it's to realize it then and appreciate it as you just said with your friends, and then even to talk to somebody about it, like me, who understand that gravity of these folks and these musicians and who they were, and it's just, it's still amazing, right?
And they were dedicated, like Sinatra was a dedicated musician. He was into music. So when he came to hear Buddy, he came to hear Buddy. He wasn't just hanging out and socializing. He came to hear Buddy's band and feel the greatness of what was happening. And when you meet someone like Sammy Davis Jr., who was another great talent, and Dean Martin, these people were incredibly talented and were heavily involved in the wave of the music industry. There's actually a dear friend of mine, Tonio Pedisano, that became Sinatra's manager for the last 25 years of his life. And Tony just has a new book that's out called Sinatra and Me in the Wee Small Hours. And he wrote the book about Sinatra and his memories of Sinatra. He actually mentions me in the book, which was very kind. We were in a band together, Tony and I. And after that band is when he kind of joined up with Sinatra and went on to, travel with Sinatra and become his road manager. And I mean, the stories in the book are incredible, and having got to meet Sinatra and kind of seen how they live their life. They live their life intensely every day. Every day was magic and performance and learning and listening to music and talking about music. It was just that kind of a wave of an intense roller coaster ride.
Well, I think that right. There's a lot talked about is when they filmed Ocean's 11, right? Is how film during the day and do their shows at night and have fun. It's like, yeah, how do you keep up with that pace?
Well, these guys, if you watch the original Ocean's 11, which people think that George Clooney's version was the first, you got to go back to the Sinatra, to the Rat Pack,
right?
And filmed right in Vegas, so you get a chance to see old Vegas. And old Vegas back in the '60s was just magic at the highest level. And there's a drummer by the name of Bobby Morris, who just recently passed away in his 90s, who was the top drummer in Vegas starting back in the 1950s. And Bobby played with all of those acts. And just I got to know him, and I had a chance to interview him for the Sessions panel, which was so, it was a 4-part series of an interview on the Sessions panel on YouTube. And Bobby just has so many stories. He was the musical director for Elvis. He played with Sinatra. He was behind, backing Barbra Streisand and all the top acts in Vegas at that time. And the filming of that, like you said, they'd film during the day, and then these guys would go out and do gigs at night at the different hotels, the Sands Hotel. And one of Sinatra's favorite albums is Live at the Sands, The Sands Hotel was a big hotel in Vegas with the Count Basie Orchestra behind him, and that's Sonny Payne on drums. So I tell people, you want a lesson in big band jazz playing, go listen to Live at the Sands with Sinatra and listen to how Sonny Payne sets up and drives that band. It is intense. It was a whole nother world back then.
All right. I will definitely add that to my playlist.
Yeah, great.
So, Dom, I know you talk a lot about, again, there's the music aspect, right? Honing your craft, being real good at it, continual lesson and life improvement and learning. Um, but I think there's an interesting aspect of, we all get into music for the love of it and what drives us and passion. Then it's like whenever athletes they go professional, then they say, or do you lose some of that? But I think that aspect is for musicians is when they make that transition and then they start making money and it's, it's, I think that stigma has gone away where it's a sellout kind of thing. But you talk a lot about where musicians really need to start understanding and transitioning to not give away their product, look at it as a business that, to sell themselves, the importance of, and also another, I'm too, I think you've talked about in other things is keeping your irons in the fire, right? If the pandemic taught anything about us, is if you're just a one trick, uh, it's like diversifying your stocks. If things crumble away, then you don't have other things, But yeah, so I'd like to know your thoughts on some of that.
Yeah, no, that really is, and like in any investment, and what you're saying, if you diversify your investments, when one is down, something else is up. So you have to learn how to balance that so you can maintain, making the most amount of money where your money is making money. Well, if you look at it from a career standpoint, I never thought of myself as let me focus on my career. I focused on aspects that gave me joy and were passion driven. So playing music was important, but I also liked teaching because there was a reward that I learned this skill from my parents about sharing information and seeing people grow from that. There's a real joy in that. So I started teaching professionally at the age of 17 at a local store in the area in my town where I grew up with, and I walked in there and they had 2 drum students. They said, "Do you want to teach?" I said, "Great." I built it up to 35 students a week. It was intense, and I built up his business. He was making more money with his business. I was bringing in more students. Everybody was happy, and it was just this wonderful relationship that I developed with this store owner, and how I learned about teaching more. And it was so all the process of teaching. Then I got involved in, as I was teaching, there were certain ideas that I was writing out. Well, I started writing out some ideas, and then that turned into a potential book. So I then put these ideas together and published my own book and sold that. And that brought an income in. So now between performing and teaching and then this book, then I started doing different clinics at different schools. Many of the musicians I was working with in my younger days were school band teachers. And we'd play a gig together, a jazz gig, a rock gig, a wedding, whatever it was. And they'd say to me, "Gee, Tom, I love your playing. Can you come into the school and teach my drummers?" So I'd say absolutely. So during the morning, I'd go in and teach their drummers and give them some lessons. And before you know it, I was getting more students out of it. Then the school said, "Well, gee, Don, we'd like to have you back, and we'll pay you to come in." So now I'm getting paid to go do clinics. So now the morning I'm doing clinics in the schools, the afternoon I'm teaching, and the evening I'm going to a gig. On my off time, I was writing drum books. So I started to take all this in, and so I was reaching out and still enjoying all the areas of drumming, but I was reaching out to different aspects of the music industry, and that was really a lesson in having the ability to diversify. So if there wasn't, in January was always a slow time after the holidays, there were no gigs. I still made money teaching and doing clinics and doing what I did, and then when the gigs came in, it built up from there. So I didn't have to depend on any one area of my survival.
Right.
Unfortunately, in this pandemic, people that were just performing musicians and didn't do any of that, the pandemic shut them down. They had challenges financially.
Right.
For me, during the pandemic, my teaching business quadrupled. So I'm not traveling and I'm teaching via the internet in the way it is. And I've got tons of students that I'm teaching from early in the morning till, from 9 to 6 every day. And it's working. I'm surviving fantastically well. If anything, I'm making more money now because of the pandemic than when I was traveling around the world. So how do you figure this out? So I think being able to be open-minded, and I tell people the mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open. So open your mind and take in new ideas and look for inspiration in other areas that could still be from your original passion of music.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Is you have to be open minded, and that's something I learned and evolved, and never really got lessons growing up, and went in and out, and always had pursued. I think when people, I guess it depends on how serious they are. And I've learned this after going to a drum clinic in Nashville, and I know all the listeners hear me talk about this all the time. And this is where the genesis of the podcast. It really there was a striking moment in where seeing everybody hustling, playing 4 hour sets here, running down to the next one. And then even Jim Riley's, and the drum clinic I went to, here's a professional musician. He's not just the Rascal Flatts drummer. He's writing books. He's doing lessons. He's doing
Yeah,
gigs, even local. And again, he's keeping busy, and he's diverse, and he's doing other things. And I think like you said, if you really truly believe this is your passion and you feel that way, you won't feel like you're punching a clock and over exercising yourself, as long as you have the right balance, I think too, right?
absolutely. And the balance comes from, life balance to business balance. Music is my business, and my life balance is my family and my friends, and I want to make sure I keep that balance, not out of proportion where I'm just doing too much business and I'm not seeing my family. Finding that balance is extremely important. Jim Riley is a perfect example. He's got a wonderful family. Jim, who I've known very well, Jim actually came to a clinic of mine when he was at North Texas State. And if you ever have him on this show, ask him about the time that Larry London had performed at North Texas State. He'll tell you a pretty interesting story. And Jim, great player, musical director, has got several books out, teaching his dojo school at his studio in Nashville, doing different clinics. I mean, Jim is really kind of branched out, and he's doing recordings from his studio, as I am from here. So I mean, it's really kind of interesting how we have to keep on learning and seeing what the potential is of our future for what our desires are. There's a big balance in there.
Right. And I think that, yeah, that the balance part, especially once you start expanding other things into your life. And again, just like I said, other things that I've, listened to and all that, I can tell, you know, so much, love and closeness that you have with your family, and I know you talked about the balance with some of your projects, and, your wife helped you run certain, keeping things, and then even, your sons that you've talked about, which is great, is because I think that's an important thing, is individually. And I have trouble too, where, I go right in, and it's like, all right, you've got to pull up, and you got to share your time, even though you have it. So it's yeah, you said it's not easy. It's something you
It,
have
it,
to work on.
it's not easy, and I always tell my boys as they were growing. I said, listen, nothing is easy, and nothing is free. So be prepared to work hard for any type of success you want, for whatever success means to you. To me, success was if I can continue playing music and have a family and pay my bills, that was success. It wasn't about, owning a fancy car or doing it. None of that was the material thing it still is so unimportant to me. I'm totally not a materialistic person. What's the value is in people. The value is in people. The value is in this conversation. Here I'm meeting you and we're just talking about this here. And if someone's hearing my voice now live or later on, if someone hears my voice, if this could still be playing when I'm long gone, and as this is playing and I'm no longer, alive, if they can still hear the words that I'm saying and pull some of the wisdom and some of the inspiration from what I'm saying to move forward in their life, there's a certain power in that that's very, very exciting. So taking each moment and making the most out of it, which is exactly what my next book is about. My next book that I'm working on is called Owning Now. And I wrote a book called The Cycle of SelfEmpowerment several years ago, and that book has sold in over 30 countries. The follow-up book to that is now Owning Now, owning the moment. And that to me is where all the magic is, inside each now.
That's yeah. And I think in one of another interview you'd mentioned was you're here, make the most of it when you're focused in, hone in on it, and then move on, whatever the right time is, rather than being distracted. And we have a lot of distractions going on, probably more so today than we probably have ever had.
Yeah, yeah. And it's difficult. I've got this, as I said on the internet, on YouTube, the Sessions panel, which is about me interviewing. I've got over 300 interviews. I'll be interviewing some of the top musicians in the world. So to sit down with people like Steve Vai, Chick Corea, Steve Gadd, Vinnie Colaiuta, Nathan East, Leland Sklar, all these great, great musicians. Carlitos Del Puerto, a phenomenal bass player that worked with Chick Corea. Each of these stories is just so magical that I've got to be in that moment to maximize the time that I have with them. I want to capture something unique that allows those words and that message to be delivered to the now and to the future. That's a big part of the excitement of what it is. There was a performance I did recently. There's a video on YouTube called "Why Hunger, Drum Together," and I ask everyone to go there and just type in the YouTube "Why Hunger, Drum Together," 4 separate words. Why Hunger is an organization that was started by Harry Chapin. Harry Chapin was a phenomenal singer and songwriter who lived here on Long Island, and I got to meet Harry back in the late 60s because I was taking lessons with Jim Chapin, Harry's father. So after our lessons with Jim, we'd go and we'd meet up with Harry and grab a bite to eat with him. And Harry was just a phenomenally inspirational person. He started a non-for-profit called Why Hunger, which was to feed people that he noticed in the course of his travels musically. He was seeing many people that were starving. So he started this organization to bring food in. He'd ask people at his audiences to bring a can of food. He would then distribute this to around each city that he was in. And he fed a lot of people. Started this non-for-profit in 1975, built it up to now a volunteer organization where it was feeding people. Harry died in 1981 in a terrible car crash here in Long Island. His Why Hunger non-for-profit has continued. So last year in 2021, I put together produced a video with Brian Resnick, a former student of mine who's a phenomenal drummer himself. He had the idea, and I assisted him to put together a video of 100 drummers playing to a song. We got the rights to the tune Come Together, and we put 100 drummers together playing to the song Come Together that was arranged. We had classical drummers, funk drummers, pop drummers, soloists, jazz drummers, all of this in this arrangement. And when you go watch the video, it's just this wonderful roller coaster ride of hearing Ringo Starr counted off, and we're all playing Come Together together. This was incredible to have, and we've raised so far now over $600,000 to feed people through Why Hunger in the name of Harry Chapin. So Harry Chapin's vision continues 40 years after his death.
That's not just amazing, but it's very inspiring.
It's available to go by and watch. And when you watch the video, I ask everyone you're going to have to watch it a few times because there's drummers flying by. We've had Chad Smith from the Chili Peppers, Steve Gadd, Vinnie Colaiuta, Dave Weckl. We had Brian Fraser Moore. We had Little John Roberts. We had Jojo Mayer, Russ Miller, Greg Bissonette, Danny Seraphine, by gosh, Carmine Appice, Nico McBrain from Iron Maiden. You name it, we had them on this thing, and it flies by. And everyone's playing to this tune. And it was incredibly recorded and edited. It was actually arranged by Randy Waldman, who's one of the top piano players in LA, wonderful arranger. It was audio mixed by Russ Miller, who's also a great drummer, who also was on the recording playing drums. He was the audio engineer. And my nephew, Dakota Lupo, was the editor and director of all these videos coming in. So when you watch this, it's a masterpiece in the performances. It's a masterpiece in how it was mixed and recorded. It's a masterpiece in how it was edited. And this was all done for the cause out of a vision to feed people. This is huge.
I think I've seen the video, but to your point, yeah, there's a lot of things. It's like when you're watching something, you're like, I gotta watch it again because there's all these little Easter eggs, or as you mentioned, there's so many folks that are in there. So
yeah,
but I'm gonna just start probably wrapping up here. I got one more question is about the book, and as you mentioned, and then I've got hopefully you're up for the little rapid fire questions here. So, but you talked about the book. Looking forward to and I've had and again I pros and let the alums, as I mentioned earlier, um, in the group there, I had posed a question. I said, hey, I says, an opportunity to interview Dom. I said, what are some of the questions or things or, kind of help, insight. And everyone, of course, was like, was like, Dom's awesome and great. And a lot of folks had also talked about, the book as the one that was out now and, the cycle of empowerment. Sorry. I mean, how did you come up with that? How did you come up with this cycle? And I think also touch upon for those that aren't listening that aren't drummers, how I think you mentioned previously how this book isn't just for drummers.
Oh yeah. This is in my global travels. I mean, I've traveled, as I said, to over 60 countries, all of them more than once. And in that traveling in the past 40 years, you just you, you can't help but learn. Traveling is the best teacher, and wisdom is the combination of knowledge and experience. Knowledge is just information. Information alone does not necessarily make somebody wise. But when you put that knowledge into action, that becomes experience. Then you'll understand what works and what doesn't work. That's where wisdom starts to enter into the game. So the cycle of self-empowerment came about where I was meeting people that were having the same challenges of not believing in themselves and not having enough power within themselves to follow their dream and do what they wanted to do. So they were not self-empowered. So I started to come up with concepts of how to help these people. And each village, each country, each city I went to, some of the same challenges. So I started making notes, and the book kind of wrote itself. So the cycle of self-empowerment was a graph that starts with passion, builds up to your foundation of all these different words of tools, goes into the goals of how we need to map out the plan to reach our dream and our vision. And that cycle is available actually on my website, domfamularo.com. People can go there and download the cycle free and just kind of see how it is and how it can apply to their life to give them empowerment. I cannot empower you unless I'm first empowered. Empowerment means to give power. I can't give you power unless I have power. I can't make you happy until I'm first happy. Just as I cannot love someone until I first love myself. So that came a part of the process of how I could use this. And when I wrote the book, although it was from my traveling and musical experiences, it really isn't just about music. It's about self-empowerment, what we need to do to give ourselves the tools to believe in who we are and have the confidence and the self-esteem to move forward in the success direction of our lives. It's been fantastic. And having actually the book is, I had the book, I just did a class on the book just a few minutes ago, so I have the book right here. But what's interesting about it is, and the book is available digitally. I tell everybody it's much easier digitally. Go there and, download it immediately to your phone or your computer, and you've got the book immediately. It really is about reaching people and inspiring them to aspire. Inspiration is to inspire someone to lift them. Aspiration is when that person walks away and chooses to continue to lift themselves. If I can inspire someone to aspire, that really is a journey that I believe is something that is worth having as my purpose.
And as you mentioned, having this lifelong knowledge, taking in and growing yourself, but yet then to pass it on to others. And I think through teaching, and that's what, as you mentioned, teaching is almost like it's a very soulful thing,
Yeah.
and so.
Oh, absolutely. And teaching in how I teach myself, how I learn, how I teach my individual students, how I teach in master classes, how I teach in clinics. It's all about this trying to lift people. If that's the core, you're going to have a pretty purposeful life.
Excellent. So, all right. So, Dom, this is our rapid fire. I know we're coming near to the end here,
Right.
and so this is a little segment. Again, it's a yes or no. First thing that comes to mind, kind of, it's a little fun, and so it's called
in 4 beats or less.
So basically, these are crumbs for drums and rums.
But up, boom.
I got my ums together, right?
Hold on, I think I have it here. Hold on, no. Oh no, it's not on this one. No, I had a rim shot on it. Oh, love it. So yeah, so 4 beats or less. So yes or no, first thing that comes to mind. It's some fun questions and kind of make you think. So, question number one, in 4 beats or less, what's one thing you think makes a good music teacher, drum teacher?
Compassion. Understand who the student is, what the student needs, and utilize your resources of what that student needs to have as a plan to achieve what will give them happiness and joy on the instrument.
Excellent. In 4 beats or less, what's something people don't know about you? I guess they will now, though.
My wife rescues dogs, small breed dogs. She has found homes for over 60 animals, and I am just an absolute dog lover. I've got these wonderful little pets that are around the house, and when these wonderful rescues come to our house, they were found on the street. They're lost. They're lonely. When you pick them up and hug them, they give you this unconditional love that is so powerful. I absolutely love sitting on my couch with the 4 dogs on my lap. They just hang out and they lay with me, and just to spend time with them, it's just the absolute best to understand truly what unconditional love is.
That's beautiful. Our previous guest in the podcast, the Rum Traveler, Joe and Missy, they talked about, they go to the Caribbean a lot, and they have, I'm probably going to screw up the link here, so I'll hopefully fix it in post, is pause BWI or B. It's like animals that are in the British Virgin Islands, BVI. I think that's what it is. And they're involved in that, bringing strays or animals, dogs and cats to the U.S. and find homes, and so it's two guests back on the dogs.
That's beautiful. Well, actually, my wife works with an organization called Yorkies 911 Rescue, and it's here on Long Island. And any small breed animal that's anywhere around the world that has not got a home, they take it in. Animals are flown in from literally all around the world. When they had the storm in Puerto Rico, there were many dogs that came in that were strays. The people just abandoned their dogs on the beach. So all these dogs were collected, brought in. All the small breed went to Yorkies 911. We took many of them in. My wife trains them and spends time with them. I get to sit with them and just enjoy the wonderful enthusiasm that these dogs have to just now have love in their life and have, just a home, which is a pretty powerful experience.
So, in 4 beats or less, this is going to be an interesting one, I think. Who's on your Mount Rushmore of drummers?
Wow, great. I have a photo in my room that was hand drawn by a young drummer, and he put in there Chick Webb, Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich, and Louis Bellson. And I'd probably add someone like Elvin Jones and Steve Gadd. These are drummers that have changed the musical culture from their perspective of their instrument. So those are some pretty deep names of people to research. I mean, Chick Webb was just a phenomenal, he was Buddy's favorite drummer. Gene Krupa helped us to deliver the drums to the world with the excitement. Buddy Rich set a standard that was incredibly well received and still is well received. And Louis Bellson, what he did musically as an arranger and a writer, a player and a performer, and double bass creativity that everyone said it would never last, it still has happened. So these creative people, and Steve Gadd has changed the way of thinking and drumming. There's so many great legends that I think should be on that carved in rock for sure.
Yeah, I've had some ask me, is it 4? Can I have more than 4? I go, this is your Mount Rushmore. and I think to tie back to the episode I had with Kelly, and again, I got to have her back on it because I know her drum history channel that she's been doing is amazing. And then talking about drummer lineage, as you mentioned there's, and I know you've mentioned on other interviews that you've had and I think it was even with Adam you talked about was when you who's this guy? Well, go learn this guy. And
yeah, you really have to kind of go back. I've got on my website, I've got a sheet that's called the Drum Teacher Lineage. And, when I wanted information to learn the techniques of Billy Gladstone, George Lawrence Stone, and Sanford Moeller, They had died in the mid-60s, 1971. I was 18 years old, and it was Max Roach that directed me to learn those techniques. Gladstone was fingers, Stone was wrist and rebound, and Moeller was this whip. He said, if you have those three movements, you're going to understand getting around the drum set. Well, I said, I want to study with them. And Max said, well, they're gone. They're not here anymore. So my next question was what impressed Max the most when I said, who were their best students? He said, that's where you want to go. And that led me to Shelley Mann, the best student of Billy Gladstone. That led me to Joe Morello, the best student of George Lawrence Stone, and Jim Chapin, the best student of Sanford Moeller. That's kind of where I began my journey of learning, and so really a powerful lineage.
All right. So last question. And we talked a little bit about it, but and I think and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're Italian background, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So listening, as I mentioned, listen to other interviews, podcasts, as I mentioned, picked up that you're very close with your family. So what's your typical Sunday dinner?
Oh my gosh, it changes. Sometimes it's Italian based, where my wife will make a wonderful Italian meal. My wife actually learned how to make a sauce from my mother, who learned from my grandmother. So we have this incredible tradition in our household. When my boys come over, a Sunday dinner could be one of a million different things. My boys love the variety. I've taught them to eat different food from all around the world. So we might come in and we might request Indian, and we'll go to an Indian restaurant and bring that in. So Sunday is a global experience of whatever we are in the mood for at that time. We allow the world to feed us. So we just did last Sunday, we did sushi and had a phenomenal Japanese meal. We've done Indian food, we've done Chinese food, we've done Thai food. So all of that comes in. But we always seem to have a higher percentage of Italian food that sneaks in. So it's really fantastic.
Awesome. And I think ultimately, the Sunday dinner isn't so much about the meal. I mean, I may offend people by saying that, but again, it's the family, right? It's the getting together.
No, the food is just an excuse to bring people together, and we do that, and it's just a phenomenon. I tell myself, I don't care what I'm eating as long as we're together.
Yep.
As long as we're together, and I have the advantage to have my wife and my kids there, that just makes the quality of why I'm putting myself through all that I do in my travels. It adds just so much more value.
So, all right. So, I think that's we're ready to just kind of put the bow on it. And so, Dom, what should everybody check out? What's the final word you've got for the listeners? Here's a shameless plug portion, right?
I would say if they go to domfamularo.com, they can find more information about what I'm doing. And there's a page that's called free downloads. On the free downloads, they can download many documents that I have there. All of my social media, on my Facebook fan page, on my Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok, I'm involved with all of that because of the request that I have of people assisting me in social media. Frank Perry is a wonderful student of mine that understands social media, so he helps me out with all the social media stuff. And I just want everyone to understand that we're in this together. If the common ground that we all set at one point in our life is we said, I want to play the drums. And that just connected us all together for this lifelong journey of learning and fun and the power of music. So bring it all on. Keep on doing it. And if I can help anybody out, reach out and contact me, and we'll work together.
Excellent. Excellent. And one last thing. So now that we've made it through the podcast, I want to welcome you to the alumni.
Yeah. Drums and Rums and Crumbs, and man, yep. Bring it on. There it is.
There you go. And where the backbeats meets the spirits. There you go. So
fantastic, Paul. Well, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, and everyone that's listening to my voice. Really seek out, a higher quality of what you can do to offer to this world. Not everybody can change the world, but I think as individuals, we can bend it. So let's all work on bending it to a better place.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate it. Have a great day, Dom. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Paul. Stay well and hope to meet you soon.